The New York Times chief Washington correspondent is David Sanger, and he detailed a U.S. covert cyber attacks against the North Korean missile program under the Obama administration in the paper. And he joins us now to discuss this latest reporting. Welcome, David. Before we get to your specific reporting, President Trump is very focused on North Korea. Give us your sense about why he should be.
Well, when President Obama left office, he made it pretty clear, as President Trump has said, there's one big military problem out there. President Trump's never quite said what that is, but clearly it's North Korea. And it's North Korea because in the last year and a half of the Obama era, the North Koreans made huge progress in both their nuclear tests and in bringing in a new generation of missile technology that eventually, maybe 2 years from now, maybe 3, maybe 4, but not that long, is going to be able to reach at least the west coast of the United States. So the time frame for dealing with this problem, which has been kicked down the road by president after president after president, is really narrow.
And you detailed the cyber attacks used to try and keep that time frame really long.
That's right. So the key to this right now is keeping the North Koreans from learning how to get that ICBM across the Pacific. And the Pentagon, with the help of the intelligence agencies, worked for many years to come up with ways to do this using cyber technology, to actually interfere with the way that the North Koreans could send those launches. And in fact, the origin of the story, John, was that my colleague Bill Broad and I, who worked on nuclear issues for a long time, were sitting around one day last spring saying, these things are just falling into the ocean too fast. And Bill went back and discovered that the design on which this missile is based, which is an old Russian design, had a failure rate of about 13%.
When the Russians were
doing them.
Yeah.
And the North Koreans were running a failure rate of about 88%. Now, a lot of things could explain that. The North Koreans are not the best manufacturers in the world, they're not the best welders in the world, but clearly something else was making this worse, and that was it. And then there's President Obama, who looked across the spectrum of our defenses and said, this missile defense that we have spent $300 billion building since the Eisenhower era, the stuff that's up in Alaska and California.
Right. That shoots it out of the air.
Right. Has a failure rate of about 56% under ideal conditions. So he said, this is not going to defend us against the problem.
So have the North Koreans figured out these cyber attacks, and have they gotten better? And what does that mean for U.S. vulnerability?
Well, one of the reasons we ran the story now is it became pretty clear that the North Koreans, who have an investigation underway, figured out that somebody was messing in their system. And so we went ahead and wrote a story carefully in a way that we thought would not provide the technical detail to allow the North Koreans to defeat what the United States is doing. But it's clear that we've got a big issue, several big issues here. One is this enough? And that's a big issue that Mr. Trump is going to have to go deal with. Second big issue is, are there other alternatives? Do you negotiate with the North Koreans, which a lot of people say we should? President Obama decided not to. Do you take more decisive action? Do you try to attack these launch sites kinetically? You can do that.
Militarily,
yeah. Right, and blow them up. If you do that, and you miss some, you run the risk of starting off another war in the Korean Peninsula, and no one wants to go do that. So, the Russia story is a fascinating one. The tweets are a fascinating diversion. But in the end, at some point, President Trump's going to have to sit down and actually focus on a few threats like this one.
All right, David Sanger, thanks so much. Fascinating piece
Great
of
to be
reporting.
with you, John.
And we'll be right back with our panel.